Let me tell you how old I am. I'm old enough that I remember actually calling people to get directions. I was supposed to meet somebody or go to somebody's house, and I would call them and go, "Where do you live?" And they would give me directions. You go down this road and turn on that road, and that's the way you would get from one place to another. Now, I pull out my phone, and Google asks me, "Can we use your current position?" And I'll say yes, and my current position comes up. Boop. They know where I am. I sure am glad my mother did not have Google. Doesn't that freak you out a little bit? That Google knows where you are? You know, it's going to get freakier. Do you know they're putting technology in light bulbs now? So when you walk through a store, it will ping your phone or your watch. And it will say, "Mike, the last time you were in here, you bought this brand of bread. It's on sale now on aisle 8. So yeah, I'll say, yes, you can use my current position. And it'll give me a little icon. Boop, there I am. Then it will say, "Where do you want to go?" And I'll tell it, "This is where I want to go." Boop, it'll give me another little icon. And then it'll give me a route. Here's how you get there. And in fact, if you want to hit another button, it will talk to you as you're driving. Prepare to turn right in 0.2 of a mile. But if you get off track, if you take the wrong turn, you'll hear this annoying sound.
Recalculating.
Gives you the heebie-jeebies, doesn't it? Now, let's be honest. There are some people who have followed Google into a lake. I mean, those stories are out there. Or into the wilderness. We've had people lost in national forest for days because they followed Google. But, you know, most of the time you can get from where you're going, from where you are to where you want to go. You can get pretty close. Last week we talked about the first question of God to Adam and Eve, "Where are you?" And we spent some time talking about how important it is to know where you are. That first little icon. Today we're going to talk about, do you know where you're going, and are you on the road to get there? For some of you, this will be a Sunday of confirmation. Yes, I know where I'm going, and yes, this is the right place. For others, this is a morning of
recalculating.
So let's stand now in honor of God's word. Revelation 21. Then I saw a new earth and a new heaven and a new earth, and the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea no longer existed. I also saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared like a bride adorned for her husband. Then I heard a loud voice from the throne, "Look, God's dwelling is with humanity, and he will live with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them. And he will be their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death will no longer exist. Grief, crying, and pain will exist no longer, because the previous things have passed away." And then the one seated on the throne said, "Look, I'm making everything new." He also said, "Write, because these words are faithful and true." And he said to me, "It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give water as a gift to the thirsty from the spring of life. And the victor will inherit these things. I will be his God, and he will be my son. The victor will inherit these things. I will be his God. He will be my son. She will be my daughter." This is God's word for God's people. Hear it, believe it, and live. Let's pray together. We ask the question, Are we on the right road? Are we headed to the right place? But we ask that you'll be merciful but honest with us. If it is yes, then confirm it deeply within us. If it is no, don't let us take another step. And we pray this in your name. Amen. The book of Revelation was written to a group of churches, 7 churches around the city of Ephesus. John was the bishop of Ephesus, and so would have had influence, connection with these churches that are mentioned. He writes to them sometimes in particular, other times in generalities. He says to the church at Laodicea, here's what the Lord is saying to you. And in the chapters that are following is to all of the 7 churches and to all the churches that will follow. This is God's word to us. This is God's warning to us. This is God's promise to us. Here's what is going to happen. John was writing in a particularly difficult time. Most of the original 12, in fact, we think all of them except John, were dead. A lot of the leaders of the early church, Stephen, James, Paul, Peter, were all dead by the time John writes this letter. Not only were these leaders dead, the church was undergoing a series of persecutions. Now, there were all kinds of persecutions. Sometimes it was the Roman government. Sometimes people were being arrested under the charge of blaspheming. That is, they would not admit that or confess that Caesar is God. They would confess only that Jesus is Lord, and from that, they would be arrested and persecuted and sometimes executed for heresy. Some would lose property. Some would be thrown in jail. Some would be thrown out of their family. That's why the term brother and sister is so important in local church life. Now, and I know over the years it's become kind of the butt of a lot of jokes, but in the early church, it wouldn't be unusual for someone to be thrown out of their family, for somebody to go home and say, I've decided to follow Christ, and the family throw that child out or throw that person out of the family and literally hold their funeral. And this child would have nowhere to go. So they would go to the church and they would say, I have no family. I've been thrown out of my family. And the pastor would say, sure, you have a family. Here's your mother. Here's your father. And give that child to another family. And here are your brothers and your sisters. It was the way that the church reconstructed family. Put people together with brothers and sisters, moms and dads, uncles and aunts, all in the faith, so that people wouldn't be orphans in the world, not for the faith. That's why that term is so important. There was a lot of that going on. Neighborhoods did not want Christians moving in there. There was a lot of that kind of peer pressure to go somewhere else, go live somewhere else. We don't want you around here with your religion. And the church was going through a very hard time. John was going through a hard time. John was put on the Isle of Patmos. The Isle of Patmos is a rock in the middle of the Aegean Sea. To call it an isle is, well, flattery. It's just a rock. And people go out and say, hey, you can see the rock where John was. And you go out there and it's a rock. There's the ocean and the rock, and that's where John was. You see, Rome put John where he couldn't get any Wi-Fi. Cut him off from his church, because the worst thing you can do to a pastor is cut him off from his congregation. But the world didn't know that the very place, the wilderness, where they send you to get rid of you, is the place God brings you when he wants your full attention. And so on the Isle of Patmos, God had John's full attention, and it was the Lord's day, we're told. John says it was the Lord's day, and he went into worship. It didn't matter that there wasn't a church there. It didn't matter that there wasn't a congregation there. It didn't matter that the choir or orchestra wasn't there. The only thing that mattered is that this was the Lord's day, and Jesus is still Lord. That's all that matters. And so John goes to worship, and this book of Revelation unfolds in front of him, and he records it. And there's bad news and good news. What's the bad news? It's going to get worse before it gets better. And it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. Shouldn't be surprised, shouldn't be shocked. You should understand this is what happens when a dying world gets desperate to hang on to its power, to finally defeat Jesus and the claims of his kingdom. This is what happens when a world gets desperate. It's going to get bad, and it's going to get worse. There are going to be days when the dragon seems to win. This dragon is mortally wounded, dying but not dead. And according to chapter 12, every now and then, he will swipe his tail and he will take believers out. And we will come together and we will say to each other, we don't know why this has happened. We don't know why God has let this happen to us, because it seems that the dragon is winning. He will win certain battles, but not the war. In chapter 19, the war comes to an end when the beast is captured. Now, I know we have had all of these books and all of these movies talk about how dramatic the end is. When good versus evil, when all the forces of evil line up against Jesus, and Jesus, barely hangs on. Have you read it? You know, I see something like that and hear somebody talk like that. I say, well, you just haven't read it. Chapter 19, there's one sentence. One sentence. John says the beast was captured. That's it. Nothing blows up. No great battle. All of evil lines up. The beast is roaring and snorting and slinging slobber, and Jesus rides up and goes, yo, big fella, over here. And that's it. It's over. And the Father gathers his children, calls them back from their graves, calls them back from the oceans where they've drowned. Wherever they have been lost, he now finds them and brings them home to him. Now, I know this is where we get caught in all of the details. Don't have streets of gold. And God's going to look at you and go, well, I had to do something with it. You know, we paved streets with it up here. We never could figure out why you guys work so hard for asphalt down there. We paved streets with it here. It's not that valuable. It's not the currency up here. We get carried away with all of that. But did you see how John described it? I will be their God. They will be my children. We'll be home. However you want to describe it, the important thing is your home. Now, when I was a little boy, my dad worked 3 jobs, 2 jobs all my life, sometimes 3 jobs. And I was always going to bed before my father got home. But I was sneaky. I wouldn't go to sleep. I would lay there in bed, but I wouldn't go to sleep until I heard my dad come home. I could recognize his footsteps in the hall. When he got home, I'd go to sleep. To the day he died, I could always recognize my father by the sound of his footsteps. Dad's home. We're okay. Look at the way that John describes heaven. The big news, Daddy's home. And we're home with him. All of the things that keep us from knowing God have been removed. All the things that keep us from understanding. Paul says in that day, even though right now we look through a dark glass, a tinted glass, in that moment we will know Christ even as he knows us. There'll be an intimacy of this relationship, a depth of this relationship, and nothing will break it. Nothing will come between us. Nothing will scatter it or dilute it or distract it. Nothing. All the things that get in the way, grief, anger, death, they're gone. It's just you and just the Father. And the first thing he's going to do is wipe the tears away from your eyes. Have you ever seen a parent do that? You ever been in a moment when the kid's hurting so bad, the kid can't tell you what happened? Right? The kid will come in, and nobody knows what happened. What does the parent do? Kneels down in front of the child, takes the child's face in their hands, and wipes the tears away with their thumbs. It's okay. I'm right here. You're okay. Stop crying. I'm right here. Now tell me what's wrong. First thing that happens, it's not your tour of your mansion. If the Father will take your face in his hands and dry your tears and tell you it's okay. You're all right. He's right here. And all of those things that caused you to cry, grief, fear of death. According to some philosophers, it is death that crushes our lives. It doesn't matter if you're a good guy, it doesn't matter if you're a bad guy, you all end up in the same place, right? We all end up dead, we all end up buried. It doesn't matter how you live. Death robs us of all meaning. Not so. The Father doesn't let death have the last word. In fact, there'll come a time when death won't speak at all. Now, not just when you lose people. There are lots of griefs, aren't there? There's grief of missed opportunity. When you knew you should have taken the chance and you didn't. There's grief of broken relationships. There's grief of flubs, mistakes, foolish choices. I hate I did that. You grieve it. And yeah, there's the grief of losing people. They say time heals everything. It doesn't. I had a friend of mine who lost his wife. 2 years later, he told me, he said, Mike, I'm tired of hurting all the time. I hurt all the time. I lost my father just over 5 years ago. You learn to grieve differently, but you still grieve. There are days I would give anything to call him on the phone and hear him laugh. There are days I would give anything to hear him tell me, hang in there. I raised you strong. You're tough enough for this. And I can't call him. And I grieve for what should have been, for what might have been. In that moment when he's wiping my tears, there will not be any might haves. It will be as it should be. It will be as the Father desires it. And it won't ever not be that way anymore. Now, here's an interesting thing about that description. You can have that relationship with God now. You don't have to wait for future tense. You can have that kind of intimacy with the Lord now. And you and I have known people who have had that. Okay? I've known a handful of saints across my life that honestly, there was one professor I had at Samford University that when he prayed, you were scared to open your eyes because you knew Jesus was stopping in to hear what Dr. Bryant was saying. I mean, it was kind of spooky when he prayed. I've known other people like that who lived their life in the present moment with the risen Christ, who were not afraid of dying, who would talk to you about it, who had been able to work through the griefs and the regrets of their life, and were now able to live in such a way that they did not have any more regrets. That life that John talked about one day in heaven is now available to those of us who follow Christ right now, if that's what you want. See, that's where it gets a little dicey, if that's what you want. Now, most of us, come on, just you and me talking, okay? We're friends. We've known each other a long time. Most of us don't want that, do we? Come on now, be honest with me. Because you don't spend that amount of time in prayer. Well, might we have things to do? Well, we've got a life to live. We just can't sit around and, we're not like you, like I live on Mars during the week. You don't live in the real world, Mike. You don't spend that kind of time in scripture study. Why? If we did all that, we would lose all our contacts on Facebook. We wouldn't know what was going on in Game of Thrones. We'd show up for work. We wouldn't have anything to talk about. It's a tough world, Mike. There are different rules. No. There is one king. There is one kingdom. Everything else goes away. Everything that is not built on the word and life of Jesus Christ goes away. We're spending our life building castles of sand that won't last. Now, anytime somebody finds out I'm a pastor, their first question is always the first question. I just want to know something, preacher. How can a God who says he loves everybody throw most of us in hell? That tells me a couple of things. One, they haven't been to church in a long time. Two, they never read the Bible. Because I'll ask them, where did you read that? And they'll look at me and say, you didn't read it in Scripture because that's not what happens. God doesn't throw anybody anywhere. He does respect your choice. So here's my question to you. If you don't want to be with Jesus now, what makes you think you'll want to be with Jesus then? If you don't enjoy the presence of the Lord now, what makes you think you will look forward to it then? Why is it that some of you think that you can live totally without Christ now, totally disobedient to his teachings, totally outside of what he expects and what he tells you is valuable, and then one day you will wake up and in heaven you're just going to have all kind of fun? Mark Twain had a sarcastic piece in his book, Letters to the Earth. And he said, Christians don't take heart lessons. But when we get to heaven, everybody's going to play a harp. But in real life, he said they wouldn't cross the street to hear a harp concert. But that's all we're going to do. What makes you think that that's what you will enjoy? Is that what you want? You see, if you don't want to be with God now, he will not force you to be then. And hell is everything heaven is not. Tears that never end, pain that never ends, grief that is never eased, a God who is never there. Now, is that where you want to go? Are you on the road that gets you there? You know, I've had the running joke for years. I-40 goes to Memphis. It goes to Memphis every day. It doesn't go to Birmingham some days, Louisville on other days. It goes to Memphis every day. And so when you get on I-40 West and you leave Nashville, you shouldn't be surprised that you end up in Memphis. There are signs, Memphis, 100 miles. And some of you are on the road that doesn't lead to heaven, doesn't lead to the presence of the Lord, and you are surprised when you arrive in hell. Is this where you want to go? Or are you on the road that gets you there? Now, we've been asking a series of questions, this sermon series, and giving you a card. You'll find it there in the back of the pews. Get the card. Everybody get a card. I'm not doing this for my health. On one side of the card, I want you to write, where do you want to go? Last week we talked about where you are. This week we're talking about where you want to go. Where is it that you want to go? On the other side of the card, I want you to write this question. Are you on the road that gets you there? And if you're not, then this is the Sunday to do some recalculating. Let's pray together.